sit here patiently and just wait to see if anyone wants to join the conversation. Oy, oy, oy. Get ready. All right. Hello, all. Hello. I'm a bit winded right now. A bit winded and a bit pregnant. I had a doctor's appointment today. I'll get into that later. All is well. I'm very tired. Very, very tired. I am waiting patiently for Julie from LA Lactation to come in. We're going to chat all things about flanges. I was thinking about it. I'm like, how are we going to go about this conversation? Because there's a lot to be said. And then, full of flanges. So, we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. If we can get Julie on. Julie.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit. This is already a better start than last time. I know before we had a little bit.
Right.
Wait, I'm like,
Except I was gonna say, like, your head is. We're seeing the boobies, which is great, but
that's a little better. There we go. I'm gonna tilt this up. There we go. As long as you can see my hands. I have a 4-tier cart here. I'll probably fall apart with my luck. It's full of flanges. So
that's amazing. See, I've got my desk here. There's
cool.
All my stuff.
All
the good stuff. I don't have the collection cups because when I get them from samples from companies, I give them away. So I don't have any collection cups right now, but I need to get a set because I have a lot of patients that ask about the collection cups and I need to get my hands back on them again.
It's not a problem. I've got collection cups, I've got mobile pumps, I truly have a little bit of everything. I think you and I right now are going to complete basically anything available on the market.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it because this is really one of the most important topics that really needs to be discussed in the lactation world, because historically the 24 and 27 millimeter flanges were standardized like 120, 150 years ago when pumps came out, and they really didn't change until probably around 2010 with the Affordable Care Act and all these pumps on the market, where we now had the masses pumping and we're like, why does this hurt? Why are you losing milk supply? So really there were like 21, 24, and 27 were the OG original sizes. And if you fell outside of that, you might be able to get a 30. Historically, they made them out of glass. And then it's really only been the last couple of years that we've started seeing more products on the market, more sizes on the market, more options. And I wish I were pumping now. It's a totally different experience.
It is. It's very different. Even from 6 years ago when I had started pumping to today. Like, there's just so many more options and such a variation of materials and contours. And I really believe that they each suit their own needs. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know what I fit best with. I know what I respond best with. And like, I don't have the clinical experience that you do. So it's really interesting too, to like hear your side and like what you see on a day-to-day basis. Like, I do virtual and I talk to moms nonstop, but it's different, it's different. So I'm looking forward to all this.
Just starting off the bat, what I always like to tell women, parents, however they prefer, is that we're doing a bra fitting, and you might measure one size, but when you try it on versus when you use it can be different. And across different brands, it can feel different. So most of us who wear a bra can relate to a 36D at Victoria's Secret is not a 36D at Target. And a razorback versus a semi versus a demi versus a front closure versus wider straps versus more hooks has a different feel and experience for different breast size, shape, and cup size, right? So there's a lot of variability, and we really need to approach flange fitting identically. The same diameter across 6 different flanges can be a very different experience based on breast and nipple anatomy, because it's anatomy and it's as varied and unique as unicorns. So that's what I always like to remind parents is we can measure you, and that's a start. We can try something on, and it's the beginning, but it's consistent use that will actually tell you what will work best for you. And we're still in science versus art. There's a science to this,
Mhm.
but we're still really in art phase of it. Just looks so different for people.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and that's why, like, I know, and I'm learning more. I'm seeing it more often, and there's it depends on which way you fall. Like sometimes we have to add size to our what am I looking for, the resting size, like
Yep.
our add, or sometimes I talk to moms who they measure a 17, they use a 17. I have others that measure a 17 and do best with a 19, but then we're using a plastic, but something's still off. We switch to a silicone and boom, we're
Yeah.
like, it's money,
Yeah.
So there's
The other thing to be conscious of is how quickly the breast changes. When you're sizing for a 3-day postpartum breast that's now in engorgement, that can feel very different than when you're 6 months postpartum and you're starting to go back to pre-pregnancy size. And I think that was the big issue with hospital settings when they're doing fittings, is they're seeing a breast at a different stage in lactation than what I do in private practice. Where different windows of time have different breasts, and sometimes we need to evolve with the flange, and sometimes it's again taking unique anatomy in mind. So it really is, it's a great conversation, because I think that's what it needs to be. It's a conversation.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that too, because I mean, I'm gonna, of course, like test it on myself, because I have found, personally speaking, from my first singleton to my second singleton, I did require different flange sizes. And yesterday I had a consult with a mom who was sized by lactation by measuring,
Yeah.
um, very early postpartum at a 14 and 15 millimeter size, and then yesterday we sized at a 17 resting.
Yeah.
So there is a variation. So
Well,
I'll
I
check
don't know
back.
about you, but from before I got pregnant to now, I wear a different bra size.
Oh yeah.
My, I don't even want to tell you what I went from to. I'm still trying to lose the baby weight 4 years later, but breasts
Oh,
change, and weight gain and weight loss impact breasts. Now, nipples tend to have a little bit less change, but they can still change.
mhm.
They're a flexible anatomy. So I think that's the other thing for people to remember, is it's not static.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. This is a great conversation. I'm
I know, I
excited.
love it. So yeah, let's kind of jump. Let's go old school first, right? Like in my mind, I'm thinking hierarchy of like plastic, silicone,
Yeah.
inserts, whatever. We
Yeah.
can kind of flow from there. But when most people, when they get their pump, if they're getting a primary pump, they're going to get a plastic flange,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
There's different sizes and shapes. So these are both. This is Medela. This is a Nena supply, but you have circle and ovals, and you can have different concaves of these, so different pitches and angles depending on the diameter. So interestingly enough, in my practice, I don't know about you, but I tend to find very few people that actually really end up liking the plastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I will say the one thing that I've noticed a high correlation between is elasticity in preferring silicone. But I have moms that absolutely like have no elasticity, or not no, but of course we all
Yeah.
have some, but not excessive, and they cannot tolerate silicone, and they pump most comfortably with plastic.
Yeah. That's really where, when I'm doing a flange, I'm going with my 3 F's, right? Fit, feel, function. Does it fit comfortably? Only nipple in and out of the tunnel with no rubbing, no color changes, no blanching? Does it feel good, where there's no tingling pins and needles after you pump, right? It does not painful. And then does it function? Does it efficiently empty? And so that is where, when you're trying these on, you're looking for, does it fit? Does it feel comfortable, and does it empty, move the milk that it's supposed to move? And yeah, there's some people that really do well on these plastic flanges, and some people that don't.
I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the personal fit with with
Hmm.
that silicone
Yeah.
rim. It's far and few between that I talk to moms that actually prefer those. I have
Yeah.
like one or two occasionally, but in your practice, like which mom do you find that like who's having a preference to that?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, when I was pumping, because my youngest is 4.5, so I was pumping, I weaned 2.5 years ago. This was my flange, even
Yeah.
though I would measure it at 13. So I know, but I tried the 24 with my first 7.5 years ago and got plug ducts from it. And then they didn't have any of these. Lactec only came in the 24 at the time, and flange inserts didn't exist. So I used this flange and it worked fine for me, but I had to do hands-on compression the entire time I was pumping.
Okay.
Right. And I pumped with my first, I pumped until she was 15 months old. And with my second, I pumped until 11 months old, different work schedules. But I was able to maintain supply fine on this. And I felt that it approached my breast in a reasonable manner. But I liked this much better than the circle because of I have a larger breast. And so this was more comfortable than the circle.
Sure.
But for me,
cool.
it was limited availability. It didn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I started on the I have us inserted here. I started on the plastic, like you've got, and then when this was 6 years ago, and that's you had mentioned how the Lactec were only 24s. I believe this is a 24 actually, Lactec flavor. And then I switched.
Is that the Lactec or is that the Idaho Jones?
This is. I'm sorry. You're right.
You're the Idaho Jones. I have two. Can spot
Which
it
is this?
from a mile away. Yeah, that's
this is Lactec. I don't know which generations they are though. So yeah, we've got which we can get into the bit of a difference too on these. But yeah, I personally I have elastic tissue, and I found that the plastic were quite painful. And then once bringing in the Lactec, I did find them to be far more comfortable, which was really interesting and a saver.
Well, it's interesting because this is a 21. This is the Medela. This is a 21. This is the May Mom that's compatible Spectra. This is a 21. This is the Idaho Jones, and this is a 21. And all of these, the diameter is the same, but these are all a totally different pump experience.
Yeah, I have to admit, and I have to complain, I hate that the Medela is such a short tunnel. Yeah. Like back in the day when there weren't all those options, moms are like, I need a 21, but I'm hitting the back of my flange because it's so short.
Right, because this nipple works great with the shorter flange. This is this is basically my breast crocheted. This is how my nipple looks and how short it is. This nipple doesn't do well in that short tunnel, right? Even though diameter wise, those are crocheted pretty similar, but length of the nipple and elasticity of that tissue absolutely makes a difference. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, there's too many options now, but I'm hoping this can help like dial it in for a few out there. So would you suggest, and I hate to spend money when it's not needed. So if you've got someone that's starting their pumping journey, or like just needing to get through, a couple days worth, maybe not an exclusive journey. I always suggest to use what you have. Like, let's see if we could dial in what you have first and comfort wise before you go spending a bunch of money, because Lord knows you can really break the bank with all of these parts and pieces.
Yeah, for sure. So normally if you happen to be in an area where you can see a qualified IBCLC, many of us are now carrying all of these, like all of this that you just saw comes with me to my appointment, and we are trying before you're buying. So if you happen to be able to see an IBCLC, double check that they have a variety of flange sizes, because you might be able to try them before investing. What I normally will do too is the flange inserts, because they're a much cheaper option to get a smaller diameter in your original pump and get a more comfortable pump without investing. Now, there are lots of flange inserts. You've got the clear ones from Lactation Hub that are shorter in stem, that are great for a lot of your wearables and in your traditional plastic. You've got the May Mom, which is a much firmer, but these are great for elastic nipples. Honestly, for really elastic nipples, have you seen these, the Pumping Pretty by Save the Milk? Look at how wide this is, right? This is a firmer base. I love these for really flat nipples in a traditional flange, because when you pop these in, look at how far it brings out. It makes it less concave. So when you have a really flat nipple with a really doughy breast, a really soft breast, this gets the flange tunnel without having to make a Madonna breast.
Interesting.
And it holds elastic tissue back really well. So I love this for really large breasts where there's a shorter, flatter nipple. or for larger breasts where there's elastic tissue. So this is my kind of
That's cool.
favorite for that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I've heard of them, but I'll be honest, I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
I definitely haven't seen it the way you're presenting them. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
It
that has
really
a
it completely
yeah.
changes the contour because this is a 24 spectra, and it has this wide pitch. So if you have an ABC cup, this does really well for those smaller breasts. But once you start getting into a D and bigger, depending on the band size, this you're really trying to shovel a breast
Yeah.
into a flange that's too narrow. So with a flange insert like this, you're pulling out that contour so it's not as deep, so
Yeah,
that
that's
you're not
crazy.
having that like
How
snapback.
does that fit in a silicone flange? And I also, I guess, like my
I
biggest beef.
don't normally stack them. I normally will either do a silicone flange or I'll do a flange insert in the traditional flange because I haven't stacked
Well,
them
and
honestly.
that's kind of where I was going to go with this. Is I feel, because I have gotten the question, can I put an insert, a silicone insert, in a silicone flange? And the answer is yeah, you can. However, in my opinion, in just my experience, you're reducing the effectiveness of the silicone flange by putting it,
Correct.
because it's not the same thing. Your silicone insert is, in my opinion, like truly about size
Right.
reduction, not necessarily about functionality of the flange itself. So you're
Yeah.
getting like you're serving two different purposes, but you're mixing them. You're
Right.
kind of using
Well,
a
and I'm using a silicone flange to compress the areolar complex to help push out milk because there's no give in a plastic flange. You're just working on suction with
mm-hmm.
a plastic flange. Silicone is going to have that give to compress like a baby's tongue would. I would think that I've never tried it, honestly. That's a brainstorm to
Yeah.
consider trying it of stacking, but in my mind, it's usually most people prefer one over the other. And there might be a unicorn out there. There might be a few people that need to stack, but we can usually get a good fit, function, and feel. It's very rare that I have somebody that I'm like, there's just a product that doesn't exist yet. You have to wait another 5 years for it to be invented.
Do you find, because this is another thing that I usually will lean toward, if you can find your size in a flange without using an insert, that's going to be a better option for you. Opposed, I'm not the biggest fan
Yeah.
of inserts. I find that they tend to be painful at times.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
because I personally, from my experience, like I remember I had shared the story yesterday with
Yeah.
someone. I was using an insert and I did phenomenal. I was so impressed by the amount of milk and how fast and
Hmm.
effective it was able to be removed. But the more I used it, I was like, what's going on? It started to cause pain just in the contact of the flange. And I don't believe it wasn't too
Yeah.
small for me. I'm not the biggest fan
Were
of
you
inserts. However,
using were you using lubrication with it? Were you
no,
doing I've
no, I was not.
I have found a lot of people when they get into that insert because it's plastic with silicone, it's a different friction level. So the pumping spray can be a game changer.
Okay, that's great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I didn't, and then I was able to find a flange that fit
yeah,
me without needing a insert, so I never really went back to them.
yeah,
However, I do use inserts in certain cups when necessary because
yeah,
I do believe that inserts have a purpose. I like
yeah.
them. They're just not my first line of defense.
It's interesting because when I'm doing a consult, I would say about 50% like the insert. And then when I get feedback later, they still like the insert and we'll use them across multiple babies. And about 50% honestly like the Lactex.
Yeah.
I prefer the Lactex over Idaho Jones for multiple reasons. I feel like the Idaho Jones, the stem is too long, so it's a little heavy.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit thick around the collar. I just haven't found anybody that's like, oh my gosh, that's it over the Lactex. But that's been my experience. I rarely put people in pump and pals,
Yeah.
but there's a small percentage that, depending again, breast size, shape, elasticity, really like these. I tend to find most that do like the pump and pals are using the blue and the
Yeah.
pink because they're silicone. I don't have as many that are in the bigger sizes, but again, these are options. So we basically changed from a trumpet to a tuba,
Yeah.
and so it just approaches the breast different.
That's
But yeah, it's kind of 50-50 for me. Most people like either the inserts or they like the Lactex.
That's funny. I used the Lactec for years with my multiples and my first singleton. My second singleton is when the Idaho Jones came out. And if you read my comparison, or I actually think it might be a review, which either or, I do express how these were painful for me because it's a different finish.
Yeah.
But I found that I needed to lubricate them until my body oil like naturally just broke these in.
Yep.
And I personally, and it truly isn't a functionality thing for me. I just found that they were just, I guess they sit in the connector, in my opinion, like they never popped out. So
Gotcha.
that was like one issue that was alleviated. But yeah, it seats in there really nicely. But I think they're both a win-win. I just think that this one is a little less to troubleshoot because I get a lot of, and I've had it too, where you're walking around and like your bottle slips out and you lose a bottle of milk on the floor. You know, I've never had that with these, but that's just about the grip, not necessarily the flange.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I do also find a lot of people do note that these silicone flanges can be heavy. So having a really good supportive pump bra or using hands can be really important. Or I've had a couple people that will take that have really large breasts that are like, everything's just heavy and out front. They'll take a swaddle blanket or a bandana and they'll actually put it under the pump flange and then tie it around their neck so that it can then help hold everything up without everything kind of pulling away from the breast.
Yeah, that's
so just some hacks on that.
Yeah. Do you? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Talk to me about collection cups. Ooh. Which are your favorite? Ooh, show me all your cups. Show me them cups.
A little bit of everything. So this is the Zomi cup. I have the S9 Pro. I have something entirely different, the Free Me Slim, which is about as flat as a pancake can get. And then I brought our favorite. Yes. And then I also have one that I really love, the Zomi Fit. Yep. This is a great flange. So where do you even start?
What about have you tried the Cara cup? Have you tried some of the legendary milk cups? Yeah. Like, have you tried some of the other ones?
Yes.
Great.
I have the Cara. Let me pull this off. I brought.
Nice. Yep.
I even brought one that's not really spoken a whole lot. Have you seen the Rumble Tough before?
I had the Rumble Tough years ago, but I haven't touched one lately.
We can get into it. I'm truly not a fan.
Do you find that those are all compatible with all of your pumps, or are there certain pumps that they do better with?
I think they're all, I have not had an issue hacking any of them ever. Everything that I just shared has all worked, with the exception, of course, if you've got a built-in motor and it, like, you know, if that's an exception to hacking, that's a whole different story. Yeah. But as far as like it just being user-friendly and working, I haven't had any issues, but I do find that the contour of these cups make all the difference.
Absolutely. Can you walk us through a little bit of the different contours?
All right, let's start. I have my little 4-tier here. Let's start with the OG. This was the first cup that I had ever used. This was 6 years ago, and at the time, I'm almost certain it was the first cup. I mean, unless you know something that I don't. The Free Me.
Free Me was one of the originals. Yeah.
And this is what I started on, and I did really well with this cup. I think it takes an insert very well if necessary. It's got a nice slope. The breast sits nicely in it. I think it's a very nice design, but everything has evolved. Yeah. So, you know, it doesn't have the most natural shape, you know, with the heavy slope and the flat bottom. They serve purposes. However, I just don't think, you know, there's better now, you know, 6 years later, there's more options. But this one is, I can't complain about it. I do like it. I have used, but I'm not a big fan of the Cara cup. Yeah. It's big. It's big. Yeah. It takes up, and it's a lot more surface area too on the breast. It just doesn't have that nice contoured slope to take in the breast. It does, but it doesn't. Like, I just think there's better options out there than the Cara cups. And I don't know about you and your experience. Like, they're not very talked about. I don't hear a whole lot about these cups.
No, honestly, I don't hear very much about collection cups. I think it's a great conversation starter because I do think they can work really well to hack a primary pump and make it a little more portable. to make a portable pump like the ones that come with the traditional flanges and bottles to make them even more wearable over using a wearable, which again, as we talked about in our last live, don't tend to empty as well.
Yeah, and you had just said using a primary with a cup. I get this question. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
If I take a primary a primary pump that I respond very well to, and I put it with a cup,
Yeah.
can I use that primary option? And the answer to that is, in my opinion, always going to be no, unless, of course, there's a unicorn, because there's always someone that's like, I do really well with it. And of course, like, high five, like, I'm really glad that that's the case for this person. However, I think, just speaking more generally, it's not going to be in everyone's best interest to pair even a primary pump with a cup, just because of the way it seats on the brain. Doesn't have the usability like you would with any other kind of traditional flange, where you can get in there and massage, or like in your case where you had to with the personal fit. Like, that's really not an option here, because you're breaking suction when you're pushing down on your breast.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I agree with you. There's unicorns that can do that. I will always recommend for exclusive pumping or trying to bring in a milk supply for a young baby or premature babies to go back to your traditional flanges. And when you're maintaining supply or getting extra pumps for oversupply stashing, then use those cups, because they can move milk decently to be able to get those extra pumps in.
I completely agree. Yeah, 100%. And I think now with the cups, and this was not an option back in the day, but now we have silicone cups. We have cups with silicone flanges. So before we had the Freemie, and then the Kara cups I had just had in my hands. And then the first silicone flange that I was aware of was the legendary Milk silicone flange. And that came out around the time I was pumping 6 years ago with my multiples, because I do believe it was them. I switched over to the legendary Milk cups, and I love them. I think they're fabulous. I think they're a great fit, especially for those who have elasticity. Yeah. Because now you don't have to fight the plastic, and you can, take advantage of this silicone option.
Right. When I'm giving recommendations, I'm like all, most, many, some, few, none. And I would say many, so most to many, I do appreciate the silicone better than the plastic. Now, it's never going to be an all. You're always going to find people, but I find many really do much better with that silicone. It has more give to it. It functions a little more how baby works.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I believe it's far more comfortable. But the good thing is there's still both options on the market if you find that you're a plastic user. One thing I do want to point out, this is not a flange. Like, it might be silicone, it might be sold as a silicone flange, but this is not the same functionality as a silicone flange that we're talking about. This one, it doesn't, I know we talked about it in the previous live, it just doesn't put any kind of emphasis on the breast. It's simply the nipple, and it's like a nipple puller. Like, it doesn't exercise the breast tissue.
I don't even know what to call it. It's like a boob coaster, and you're like,
it's like, for me, like a pancake with a hole in the middle. Like, that's all it is. It's just like flat as it comes. And
it's a glory hole. It's like
pretty much like, so.
It's not gonna really do anything. Sorry.
Pretty much, and so this is a newer product. This is the Motif Aura, which is I think it came out definitely the last year. One that came out several years ago, which I would compare respectively, is the Freemie Slim. So a lot, it's very common to hear, I want a cup with a more narrow profile. What about the Slim? There's the pink and the blue. The pink is a 5-ounce collection. Pink is a 5-ounce collection. Blue is a 6-ounce collection. It's recommended for the blue for elasticity because it's got a longer tunnel, but I think that's meaningless in my opinion, because we're still talking about this very, very flat surface. So we've got, this what's coming out.
Which is great, honestly, for very large again, doughy, more soft, pillowy breasts with flat nipples, where we need to get that immediate contact with no contour. If you have a rounder breast, if you're a rounder breast with a smaller nipple, elastic nipple, you're right, those don't tend to do well. But I have seen it's the breast anatomy and how the nipple approaches the breast that does well with the flatter contour.
Okay. Well, yeah, I haven't. I mean, this is about as flat as it can be without being like board flat, quite honestly. And then another one that I do really like, and even with I'm a like 38 double D, and I do very well actually with like the Zomi. I don't do well with these. These are just too flat on my breast. But one that has like a not so extreme contour to the flange, but I find is very effective is this LV Stride.
Yeah, the cup that comes with the cup. We've talked about that. The pump's not a great pump, but the cup's a great cup.
It is. And it's interesting because you've got something that's not too far off from each other, but you can see where the light hits. There is like, it goes flat and then it dives right in. Whereas this one, it's like flat all the way through.
And stays flat. Yeah. We need to tell LV to start selling that as a pump cup without the pump.
Good luck. Yeah. You go first.
Anyway, I've only got another minute or two here, but the only last thing I wanted to mention was Franken-pumping. Because a lot of people aren't even aware that you can Franken-pump and hack different flanges to different pumps and different flanges to different bottles with all of these other products. This one is so you can pump directly into the milk bag. This one is so you can pump from a narrower neck flange like the Medela into a wide bottle like the Spectra, and then vice versa, going from the wide Spectra into a narrow bottle. And then this handy little tiny little device is so that you can go from a Medela flange to a Spectra pump with the spoken wheel. So I do think it's people just aren't even aware that there are hacks where you can be pumping with, you can find that unicorn fit of the flange and then be able to Franken-pump, hack it back to whatever pump you have.
That's a great way to end this, because you're stuck like, well, it's the narrow one I like, now what do I do? That's how we get to the bottle that you're pumping in.
Yeah, Amazon, right? Well, this one actually was from Hygieia, the pump company. They made this that came with their pumps. All of them came with the adapter, interestingly enough, but you can find those on Amazon. All of these, you just type in whatever pump you want to whatever flange you want, and it's amazing all the different products that are out there. So,
well, cool. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about this. I feel like it's like never conversation.
Well, I love our targeted topics. So all you people watching out there, let us know what topic you want us to talk about next. And I love chitty chatting with you because it's fun, it's natural, and I love that we're educating people on all the products that are out there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, you too. All right.
I'll
we'll
talk
see you again soon.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye.